Hello, and welcome to the webinar, The Pulse of Quality in Manufacturing 2025 Industry Survey Results. This event, brought to you by Quality, is sponsored by ETQ. I'm your moderator, Daryl Sealand, Editorial Director of Quality. Thanks for joining us. Today's presenters are Chris Nahil, Director, Content, PR and AR at ETQ, and Vick Vaishnavi, CEO of ETQ. Don't forget to submit your questions, and later in the program, our presenters will address as many as possible. Today's event is being recorded and archived on qualitymag.com. And now I'm excited to turn it over to today's presenters, Chris and Vick.
Daryl, thanks very much. It's great to be here. Really appreciate Quality hosting us today. And Vic, it's good to be back with you a year later. We did this in 2024, so sort of making this an annual tradition.
It is, Chris.
Looking forward to taking everyone through the results of the 2025 survey. Just as a quick housekeeping note, the full e-book with all of the survey results and data and color is available in the handouts tab here today. Also, as a thank you for attending the event today, you'll also be getting it in email afterwards. So we'll go through a small portion of the results today. We're not going to inundate you with slides. We're going to show some slides, but then Vic and I are going to have a conversation, I guess, about the results and put some context around it. And we'll also be taking questions at the very end as well, so you can include those. And we'll look forward to have a conversation with you folks towards the end as well. So with that, this is the second year in a row we have done the Pulse of Quality and Manufacturing survey. So we'll compare some of the 25 results to the 24 results. We have done 3 of these in the past, and our intent was to do it every year, but we got waylaid by COVID. We launched this in the middle of COVID, which strategically might not have been the best thing, but it was a great start to the program. And so we like to keep track of some of the results over time, and we'll be sharing some of those with you. The survey sample, we talked to 75 quality professionals in the United States, Germany, and the United Kingdom. We focused on the titles, the job titles that you see under to the right there, Manager Plus titles in quality, QMS, Quality Assurance, Quality Control, Supply Chain Pros, IT Executives, folks in Safety, Health, and Environment as well. Folks who had with experience in manufacturing operations and plant managers as well. The reason we're talking to these folks is we want to find out what the goals and challenges are that they face on a daily basis, both today and get a glimpse into the future, what we think the future of quality of manufacturing will be as well, and various trends and issues that will impact that. Excuse me, the pros we talked to will come from a variety of different industries. This is something, again, this is an area that's sort of unique to ETQ. If I might throw in a quick plug for the company, we work across a variety of industries. So chances are good if you're sitting in this audience right now, we spoke to somebody who's in one of the industries that you work in. And so this is a very, very cross-section view of what's happening in a variety of manufacturing environments. Those regulated, those less regulated, from heavy manufacturing to consumer product goods, the entire spectrum of life sciences companies, from pharma companies to med devices and biotech companies, automotive, aerospace, and defense, chemicals, a real good cross-section of the country, the manufacturing industry. And with that, it's a fairly brief survey, 20 questions, and again from the sample of pros that we talked about earlier. We came up with 4 key takeaways that we'll highlight today. We should be able to get to all of them. And the key takeaways arrive in 4 buckets. We'll talk about the impact of a changing manufacturing workforce, the state of product recalls across manufacturing right now. AI, I have to believe that there isn't anyone sitting on this webinar right now who hasn't had a conversation about AI in the workplace in the last 24 hours, if not sometime today. Clearly a topic that's on everybody's agenda. Then we'll talk about spending on quality and quality management and where folks will be putting their investments in the future. We've got some interesting data to highlight from that. All right, so Let's look at the topic of the manufacturing labor shortage and experience and skills gap. This is a hot topic that I think everyone is experiencing right now. Let me actually just back up 2 seconds too quickly. This survey was fielded in the very early part of Q1 of this year. So we'll talk about some topics here. What had not popped up as a topic of massive debate quite yet was the impact of tariffs and the global economic situation. It was a little bit early for that. But we can sort of add some perspective, I think, on the impact of global economic uncertainty as well. But just to give you a sense of timing, this was fielded in the first couple of weeks, frankly, of Q1 of 2025, so early on. But the manufacturing labor shortage has been an ongoing problem, right? And we did ask our participants if their firm had been impacted by the labor workforce shortage and skills gap. No surprise, 70% of the respondents said that their company had been impacted. More critically, and I think this is a wild number, 88% of those folks said that the labor shortage has had an impact on the quality of their products and their services. So, Vic, I mean, those are pretty staggering numbers. How could the workforce shortage have an impact on quality? What do you think?
Well, I think, Chris, as we found out in the survey, if you start with 3 or 4 main things that we picked up, one is simply starts with a loss of experience, right? Nothing like having a trained workforce that knows your system, that understands your processes, that understands your quality routines, expectations, gaps, quality control systems. Just simply being able to replace it. There's a ramp up time, not to mention the labor shortage itself that you talked about. The other one is, I would say just simply knowledge transfer. How do you make sure that you can actually capture the knowledge of the workforce that's leaving, whether they are retiring or they're going off to do something different, and just a change of season for them. Think about COVID. How many folks essentially decided to change their careers they didn't know how long this thing is going to last. So those are all areas where, knowledge transfer and transferring it properly can be a hindrance. That's the other thing. Training itself, it's not just about, so there is knowledge, which essentially is codified in mostly people's their own brains, but also more in terms of certain systems where you document it. And then, basically the third element is, what kind of training and enablement curriculum do you have? You might have a weak training specifically related to quality. If you don't really train people to do all the necessary things that the experts used to do, guess what? Somebody's going to miss a step somewhere. And even if it is not it's inadvertently, you are going to see an impact on the quality of your product. And then one other area that, we've kind of seen that as well is safety concerns. Certainly in a plant across the board, safety incidents can happen because if you have a labor or a skills shortage, you may not understand how to operate a machinery. You may not understand how to run a certain bench. And then next thing you know is you got an incident on hand. So there's certainly the safety concerns as well, and that has an impact on quality.
It makes sense. And this seems like a problem that is probably going to get worse before it gets better, right? As we said earlier, this has been building for a number of years. And not only are there not enough people to fill all the jobs, time in job has gone down dramatically. Is there a way for technology to help sort of bridge that gap in the meantime until a new manufacturing workforce is created, or just to morph to whatever the new workforce is?
Yeah, I think we are kind of seeing it. One simply is just more automated training. Training curriculums that are more self-service, driven through automation, and then more or less also need some kind of tracking mechanism, right? How do you gauge if the new workforce is actually picking up those skills to your expectations and what's really needed to drive the production lines and quality? To Two technologies can certainly help outside of just automation for training and curriculum and tracking and stuff like that, measuring skills, testing people, making sure that they're retaining what they're learning and applying it to practice, and then almost have like a feedback loop that says, are you getting better over time? But two technologies that we've seen certainly kind of helps. One is obviously AI. You have to be somewhat judicious with the use of AI, because you really don't want to have a perception or even a reality where you think that someone's going to learn just because an AI system is actually coaching them, or just basically there is no human intervention at all. Like it's a good coaching guide to use AI, but don't expect AI to kind of do exactly what the human was expected to do. And then the second area we're seeing quite a bit is investments in connected worker technologies, wherein whether it is knowledge or training or just assessments, a lot to do with the automated training and tracking that I talked about earlier. So connected worker can absolutely help with that. The other part of connected worker is it also helps us capture that knowledge. So if I'm a production line worker and I have eventually become an expert or a subject matter expert in certain things, technologies such as connected worker allows me to capture that for reuse and or sharing with other folks in terms of sharing best practices versus the best they can practice. So certainly, technology can help, things like connected worker, AI, and then automated training and tracking systems as well.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the next key takeaway, we're talking about recalls and the state of recalls in the industry. We obviously, as a quality management company, see a lot of recalls and work hard to prevent them or remediate them for customers across the manufacturing spectrum. We asked folks if they if their organization had experienced a recall in the last 5 years, what the cost was to rectify the most recent recall. And we asked them again, as we did in the previous survey, whether recalls can be attributed mostly to internal issues or externals, and specifically supplier issues. The number of recalls, or the number of folks who responded that they had a recall in the last 5 years, actually bumped up a couple of percentage points from this year to last year, which I think we found a little bit surprising. That was 75% of the respondents, by the way, said that their company had a product recall in the last 5 years. As I said, and that was up 2 points from last year. In terms of what the cost to remediate the most recent recall, in the U.S., it was between $10 million and just under $50 million to remediate the most recent recall that the sample was being asked about. The numbers were roughly equivalent in Germany and the UK in terms of financial costs to rectify the recall. And then this year, too, all the respondents across the board, across geographies, 47%, nearly half, attributed their product recalls to problems in the supply chain. This number actually was down a little bit from 2024. It was 62% in 24. And it's probably a number of different reasons for that. Perhaps in 24, people were just finally getting their supply chain sorted out post-COVID. So maybe things were better order this time around. We'll see what the impact of the tariffs and the economic uncertainty coming down the road has on the supply chain. But Vic, just in general, what do you think some of the other reasons are, or some of the reasons are that recalls might actually be increasing?
Well, I think you started with the most obvious one, which is supply chain disruptions. You don't have to go far. All we have to look at is what the geopolitical scenario looks like around the world. You see obviously not so good events happening around the world in terms of fights and wars and stuff like that. Nobody likes that kind of stuff. It's certainly not good for supply chain. But think about it this way: every time there's an incident like that, or two countries go at each other, usually everybody else kind of starts to look at it and say, well, how do I bypass that pathway? So I would say supply chain disruptions and this constant churn around wanting to keep having to look for alternative supply chain value chains is certainly a big issue in recall. Because remember, it's not just changing the supply chain. You have to almost retool and recalibrate your entire supply chain. Everybody is involved in it. So you have to train them again. You have to make sure your expectations are clearly met. And it's going to be an iterative process before they get up to the level and standard that you expect. So, I call it, trial and error a couple of times. And then, of course, every time you do the trial and the error, you have a recall. Some might be big, some might be small, but you're invariably going to have those. The other piece I would say is just more scrutiny, whether it is regulatory or just consumers. I mean, think about the situation you talked about. There's a global economic anxiety, I suppose, is one way to look at it. So people are going to be a lot more, as consumers, are going to be a lot more scrutinizing products and services. And guess what's the one thing that they're going to look at and be willing to pay for versus not? Quality. So if you actually don't have a good quality offering, chances are that the consumers are going to reject it, and by definition, you therefore equate to a recall. It's not happening. And then the standard, obviously, of acceptance goes up from a regulatory perspective, whether it's a safety standard or if it is a side effect standard or any other regulatory aspect of products. I would say both increasing scrutiny, both by regulatory authorities as well as consumers. It just means higher expected quality, and if you fail to meet it, they get rejected, and by definition, the inverse of that is recall. And then the last piece I would say, I guess it's the world we live in. Whether you call it news or you call it social media postings, I guess the concept of news now is just global. It's at your fingertips, and your favorite social platform is going to tell you some news. Whether you think it's authentic or not, that's besides the point. But at the end of the day, if you have poor products, you can be assured that the news is going to travel much faster in today's global environment than it did maybe even 10, 15 years ago. I'm reminded of 2004, 2005. Most of these social platforms didn't quite exist, and that's only 2 decades back. And now if you think about it today, at your fingertips, I always tell people, like, look, and we've had some customers tell us too, hey, I'm really paranoid about recalls because I don't want my product bad news or bad reviews to go viral. I guess viral is the key, is a bad thing in that sense. And then certainly the bad news goes viral much faster than the good news, so to speak.
Yep.
So you add them all up, and it's not a surprise that the recalls are kind of going up.
No, there's no place left to hide. As you said, it's news travels fast and it's ubiquitous and are fast globally really quickly. There are all sorts of negatives to a recall. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think the bad news travels faster. That's the other problem.
Yeah, exactly. It's true enough. There's plenty of incentive to try to prevent recalls, but there's, and again, financial aside, brand damage, loss of customer loyalty, all that sort of stuff. Yet some companies still are not making the quality investment to actually prevent the recalls. They're stuck in a mode of inaction. And there has to be a cost to this inaction, right? I mean, what is the cost to it? Cost to not employing any sort of effort to minimize your recall? What is the cost of inaction here?
Well, I think the issue is the first element of what we have seen some of our customers have taught us, and kind of we've learned by watching them do it, is if you see quality or investment in quality as a tactical necessity, which is, hey, I just need it for compliance, check the box, and I'm done, versus a strategic differentiator or a strategic advantage, you are going to be, quite frankly, in the cost of inaction bucket, because you're only willing to invest in quality just enough that kind of gives you the checkbox for compliance. As we just discussed, that compliance scrutiny is also rising. So it's not like your quality standards from a decade back are good enough for the compliance standards of today. So you still have to kind of do that. But besides that, if you do actually realize, look at the companies that in terms of are battling the global tariff discussions that are going around between all countries across the globe. If you think about it, I was just reading the other day, we can think about, one of the most common ones in the news these days is Apple, who's being asked to kind of move its production or manufacturing, etc. And if you think about it, if you just do the math, here's a company that's looking at and saying, I'm not going to compromise on quality. And in fact, I'm going to double down on it, which means because besides my revenue, the reputation is the most important element. And if my reputation for quality is preserved, despite all kinds of headwinds, whether it's tariffs or costs or other thing else, I know the consumers are going to pay for quality. So quality is my best friend in today's geoeconomic climate. So it's that lack of realization that, hey, look, quality is not just a compliance only thing for you. So it's not, don't fall into the cost of inaction bucket. You actually are letting your competitors potentially turn quality against you as a strategic differentiator to boost their revenue and reputation. And by the way, consumers, just as we discussed earlier, are still going to be willing to pay, whether you call it premium or you call it a little bit more fair market price, but more than your competitor, if and only they perceive your product to be of a higher grade quality. And I don't mean higher grade quality as in marginally better, significantly better, which means that significant delta that you can command by the investments in quality, if you don't do it, that's your cost of inaction. You're giving up that differentiation delta that you stand to gain.
Great. All right. Audience participation time. Quick poll on artificial intelligence. So using your portal here, if you can answer the question, does your organization use AI in quality? Yes, we currently use it. No, we plan in the next 2 years. No, we plan to use it in 2+ years. And we can compare you against some of the answers that we got on the survey as well. A lot of folks weighing in. We said the hottest of topics these days. There's no one who is not considering this at some point, I don't believe. Great. And I think, to this, we'll talk a little more about this, but I think AI at this point, Vic, probably has kind of moved beyond the shiny object phase, right? People looking at practical applications and really what it means to them. We're kind of done talking about it, and now we're in show me time, right? All right, I think we'll close out the poll. Of the question, 32% of you said that you're currently using artificial intelligence. Interestingly, the folks who are on our survey said 33% are currently using AI. So you're right with the survey zeitgeist here, audience. Thank you. No, we're not using it yet, but using it in the next plan to use it in the next few years. We had 28% weigh in there. Excuse me, and we had a higher percentage in our survey. Close to half of the folks, 49% of the people said they were going to deploy AI within the next 2 years. That number was up from 47% last year. And the beyond 2 years folks were right around the same time. They're about 40% as well, too. Interestingly, 1% of our respondents said that they never plan to use AI. And to which we say, that's what you think, but you'll be using AI without actually even knowing it. Vic, AI clearly is here to stay, right? The momentum will only grow as the use cases become more obvious and more rich, more beneficial. What are the ways that you see that AI can improve quality and safety in the manufacturing world?
Well, I think going back to automation that we talked about, the automation thread, if you think about just simply on the compliance side, how do you kind of speed up compliance reporting and regulatory updates, adherence, attestations, conformance, running those checks very quickly versus spending multiple man hours in trying to get through those audits or regulatory checks. That is one area where we have seen a lot of our customers express interest that, hey, we would like to kind of do that. So that's one area. I would say, agent type or agentic AI to kind of automate the workflows in quality management, the processes that we have, all aspects of it, change management, doc control, um, NSARs, etc. All of them can be driven by AI to automate some of those workflows and processes. But more importantly, making those workflows intelligent. And when I say intelligent, I really mean more as a decision support system, which is allow the workflows to become more decisive, to take the right path as part of the quality management process. Analytics is certainly a big area that we've seen a lot of interest, which is, hey, we have a lot of data related to quality. Could you mine this and tell me, where I'm probably going to likely to have a quality problem? And tying it back to that recall discussion we had earlier, Chris, which is, can you tell me well before I ship out my products that I'm going to have a problem? That would be very smart. You would save me a lot of money, and not to mention the anxiety of brand reputation and damage.
Makes sense. In the interest of time, I'm going to move us to our next section, which is talking about the investment in quality in industries across the board. We asked our survey respondents how much your organization spends today on quality programs and people, how that spending will change in 2025 versus 2024, excuse the typo on the slide, and what the 3 top business drivers are for investing in quality. Interestingly enough, just as globally, only 55% of the respondents said that they're using an automated quality system currently. 23% of the folks who answered the survey are still using paper, which sounds crazy, but looking at some of the customers that we deal with, very large international customers, and by the way, this survey was weighted much more towards companies with greater than 10,000 employees. So this is largely focused on larger companies. So it's still a little surprising that some folks are still using paper. 40% of the respondents from the survey said that they're spending between 10 million and just a little under 50 million bucks a year, US dollars a year on quality programs. 24% spend more than 50 million a year, 50 million to just under 100 million. So again, significant investments. 60% of the respondents said that their organization plans to spend more in total quality spending in 2025, which I think is interesting. And the top 3 drivers, this is sort of select multiple areas, so the numbers here won't add up to 100%. But the top 3 drivers for investing in quality from the survey were increases in revenue, improved compliance, and to strengthen your supply chain. Vic, just look at the top 3. Again, I think we touched on this a little bit, but how can investing in quality actually increase revenue?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. If you think of it as a logical equation, quality products, move to the market faster than competitors, will give you premium pricing. You're going to have a better, strong brand reputation, which is then going to lead to customer loyalty and repeat business, right? With shorter sales cycles, because people are not going to evaluate for quality again. Easier compliance means no more punishments from regulatory authorities. No more punitive audits and fines, lower scrap, which means lower scrap costs, lower cost of rework and warranty improvements. In that sense, all affects your bottom line. So you invest in quality, your revenue is certainly going to come out on top, and primarily because you are lowering the cost of delivering your products and you're improving the quality to remain, in a premium price category.
Makes sense. We are running out of time, so I think at this point we can probably just move to any questions. Daryl, I don't know if you've been collecting questions
Indeed,
from the game.
Indeed, we have. Yes. So as promised, we are going to take some time and answer some questions that have come in throughout the program. So if you have a question for Vic or Chris, I'd encourage you to get that into the Q&A chat. Also want to remind everyone that we'd love your feedback in our webinar survey to help us improve our programs. So our first question for you guys comes from Ryan. Are there any plans to integrate an AI into ETQ reliance?
All yours, Vic.
Short answer is yes. And if you happen to visit us at Hexagon Live this month in Las Vegas, look for some more details and more information. But short answer is yes.
There is additionally an AI powered predictive quality analytics component to ETQ Reliance as well too that is AI driven that's available today.
Correct.
Terrific. That is just about all the time we have for questions today. If we did not get to answer your question here during the live presentation, we'll do our best to get that answered for you offline. But please join me in thanking Chris Nahil and Vick Vaishnavi for their presentation, as well as our sponsor, ETQ. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click the email us button on the console. Please visit qualitymag.com/webinars for the archive of this presentation, as well as information about our upcoming events. We appreciate your time and hope you found this webinar to be a valuable experience. Have a great day.